All right, Mikey. There you go. What's happening, Mike? How are you?
T Gray in the house. What's up, buddy?
No, Mike Healy in the house. And glad to have you here with us, man. And thank you for all the great things that you've been doing to help all of our other entrepreneurs in the iBoomerang family during this time to keep their businesses going, et cetera. Um, Mike, you're a rock star. You've got a great reputation as an entrepreneur. Lots of people know you for the success that you've been able to create. But I heard you say in a conversation you were having the other day that you, back in the day, you were a bartender, right? So, how about you go back to before you started having all this success and tell everybody what was going on?
Okay, sounds good. It's even more uncivilized than just a bartender, to be honest. When I was in high school, I didn't. I thought I was going to the military. Like the whole thing is, I wanted to be just like John Rambo, and I wanted to join the special forces. And I actually enlisted in the delayed entry program and was supposed to go in my senior year. I'd already signed up that summer in July to go to the military. Did my oath and everything, and then I was supposed to graduate after my first year. The following month after I swore my oath, I broke my femur playing football, and they put pins in it, missed my whole senior year, and I got a medical discharge before I even got in. And this was something, so I never took, all I had to do was get enough credits in high school to graduate. That was like my only goal, and I had most of them completed by my junior year, and I did not know what I was going to do after that. I ended up accidentally moving down to Ohio State's campus. And I wasn't a student. I just got invited. I came down, I lived with some guys, and we used to go to the bars all the time. Well, I was kind of I was a stocky guy. I could bench press a lot. I was benching over 400, squatting around 500. And they're like, hey, you're here all the time anyhow. How about if we need more bouncers? You could work the door, because I had a wrestling background. I had a kickboxing background. And the next thing you know, within like a year, I was actually head of security of all the campus bars down in Ohio State campus, which was like about
Wow.
18. And anything you could think of that happened in the bar business, Roadhouse, I've been shot at, I've been nearly stabbed a few times. And then it crossed over into bartending, so I could get behind a bar and make a little more money than just on the bouncing salary. But literally that was what I did for probably almost 10 years. And that was it. And I moved to, and I kind of, so that's
And
kind of.
I gotta break in here for a second, Mike, because
Right.
this story is really crazy. Because see, I grew up in the South Bronx of New York City. I grew up in the projects, and I can say that growing up in the projects in the Bronx, I've never been shot at.
It's not,
Got
you
me
don't want,
beat, bro.
you don't want that adrenaline rush. I'm telling you, it is not as cool as it looks. So,
Wow.
yeah,
Keep
but,
going.
yeah. So what happened was, I then, because I'd been in the industry a while and people knew who I was and things like that. I ended up helping move up in rank, I guess you could say, and to the point that I was helping open nightclubs. So I would open different clubs in different cities, and I was crazy. This is where the story kind of turns in a good way. I'm from Columbus, Ohio, and I moved to Cincinnati to open a club. And then from Cincinnati, 3 months later, I moved to Dallas, Texas, actually Arlington, to open a club. And I met this really, really smoking hot, good looking girl down there who just happened to be from Columbus, Ohio, believe it or not, who was a waitress at my club, who is my wife now of 25 years, Stacy. And it's amazing. That's where we met. And I was only there about a year. And then she moved back with me. And we both, when we moved back to Columbus together, we were both still in the bar industry before I, got into networking. So that's kind of that's kind of the short version of that would have been 27 years of my life.
I love it. I love it. That's a very colorful story. So, and I would say there was definitely a rose amidst the thorns of the story, because we've all met Stacy and she's absolutely amazing. So tell me about how you got introduced to network marketing.
Okay. Crazy story, funny one. One of the guys that used to come hang out with me was actually a former Navy SEAL. He was a little younger than me. He had gotten a medical discharge because a delayed charge underwater blew his eardrum out. So he just, and he would hang out, we'd go party together and everything. He came from a family that had some pretty good amounts of money. He was 26 years old, drove a Porsche, and he invited me to go to a meeting at a hotel where he said these guys were making some money, right? And I thought, because I'd never heard of being an entrepreneur, I was never introduced to it. Everybody I knew in my entire life and my career was a 9-to-5er, that whole 9 yards. I mean, I thought it was a job interview. And what's funny is he invited me to go on that one Monday. So I called him. I said, hey, are we going tonight? He said, I can't take you because I'm fighting. I just had a fight with my girlfriend. I'm just going to stay. I said, no problem. He goes, maybe we can go next week. So the next week I called him and he laughed and said, I can't take you this week because I'm fighting with my other girlfriend. The third week comes around. This is a true story. The third week comes around. I call him again and he goes, hey, bro, you're not going to believe this, but the other girl found out about the other one. They both dumped me. I'm not doing anything tonight. We can go to the meeting. And that's literally how I got introduced to networking. And I went, and I remember going to the presentation. There was maybe about 25 people in the room. And it was the guy that gave it was probably one of the most boring speakers you would ever hear. Real monotone, laid back and everything. And I'm sitting in the back just sweating because I'm like, oh, you got to get me out of here. This is the worst. And all I remember was like the last 5 minutes of the presentation, he flipped over the page where it showed, income earnings, like you could make money on, commission wise. And all I could think to myself was, if that guy up in front of the room can make any money, I know I got a shot. And all I was thinking was, how can I supplement my income? That was it. I wanted a second income without a second job. That was the only thing going through my head. It wasn't about, I didn't know anybody in the industry, I never heard of it, that kind of thing. And that was really my first introduction. I didn't have the money to join. It was only, I think, around a couple $100 to enroll. I sold a dresser to my roommate, and I sold some CDs back when CDs had value down on campus to get the money together because I wasn't making that much bartending. And that's how I got the extra money to go get started. That was it.
Wow. And you know what? I think that's a really powerful story too, because, it definitely has a lot of humor and excitement and thrill and drama in it. I'm sitting here like it's a documentary, but at the same time, you said you had been working for about 20 years before you got exposed to network marketing.
Well, I was 27 years old when I went to my very first meeting.
Oh, you were 27 years old. So about how long had you been working?
So I probably got a real job probably about when I was 18, after high school, because I didn't know what to do. And like, I got some odd jobs here. And I was a deep fryer guy at a local restaurant. I worked blowing insulation in roofs of houses, which I was just terrible. It was so hot. I worked at a stone quarry one time right out of high school. So I had these jobs pretty quick together. It was literally like breaking rocks on a chain gang, except with a paycheck at the end of the day. It was the worst, like top two worst jobs ever. And I remember seeing a guy in there. I remember seeing that, like, my dad thought it was a great thing to have that job and get an income. And I'm like, there was a guy there that had been working at this stone quarry. We're talking where they bring these massive 12-ton stones on these conveyor belts by these trucks, and then they lay them down. And then we had to split them, and then I had to pick them up and carry them. And I'd move literally, I could count that I would maybe move between 5 and 15 tons of concrete stones like this big, all by myself every day. And you'd be sweating. It'd be like 108 degrees because they had a thermometer right next to me. And there was people there that worked there for 20, 30 years.
Wow.
And I'm like waiting for one of those rocks to just drop on me, to cut to save me from this thing. Those were some of the jobs I got. And I forget even what the question was. I got totally excited.
I forgot the question too, because this was so fascinating. So tell me, okay, so you got started in network marketing, you sold some stuff, and that's what I remembered. You, after all these jobs, you still didn't have enough money to join, right?
Well, yeah, because when you're in the bar business and you really don't have a family or anything like that, it was just cash in, cash out. Like right. The bartenders at one bar would come hang out at us, tip us money, and we'd go the next day and drink at their bar. It was just a nonstop.
An exchange.
Yeah, we were just moving the same money to around 8 clubs. Is really what it was. And I didn't have any overhead. I had like rent and and Stacy and I, we just lived in a small apartment together. But the turning point though was when I knew I was in love. Mm. And that'll change you, right? You know, I went from this guy that bounced and did crazy things to now I got a girl that I really like and want to protect. And you want to, you know, and I remember when I joined networking, one of the things that kind of got me was like, I just all of a sudden something just clicked. Like I was like, man, I started hearing these stories of some of these people and I started getting mentorship, most importantly. Like there were some guys that took me under their wing because they knew that, you know, and they didn't have any vested interest in me financially whatsoever. It was just guys that had been in the company. They were kind of my age, but they seemed like their maturity level was so much higher than mine. We were even the same age because I was like really, really, really rough around the edges. Like, you know, cuss like a, you know, like a sailor, drunken sailor. And I had to obviously work through those issues. But what happened was they just started, I heard stories, I got introduced to it. And then I just realized that there was something else. There was like this whole light that got shined on my potential path that I never thought possible. And I was like, man, I could actually do this. And I remember it took me 3.5 months to get my first check. And it was only about the equivalent of probably enough to go eat dinner at 2 decent restaurants. But it was the most important check I ever got in my life because it made it real, right? And I think the following month, the check I got was less, right? But here's what happened. So I'm still in the bar business. I'm working at and I won't name the name of the one club I worked at. And I was so done. I was so fed up. I was like, there's got to be more to this grind, you know, and drinking every night and just all the nonstop noise and the partying. And I was worn out. And I literally that night, my career, that previous 2 weeks before that, I got to meet the #1 earner in that company. And he gave me he told me a book to read. It was All You Can Do Is All You Can Do, but All You Can Do Is Enough by Art Williams. And It was about him being insurance. And one of the stories in there was about burning your boats. And I mentioned this on one of the calls not too long ago. And I took that to heart about, you know, giving myself no way of retreat. And I got called in early and I didn't want to be there. It was the worst. And I remember asking the girl that I was working with, I was like, I can't do this anymore. I'm just done. Like I got this new business. I got my first check, you know, again, it was very, very small, but it was like, I think I can do this. And she says, what are you going to do? I go, I think I'm going to flip a quarter and see if I quit or not. And she's like, ah, and I had her put a shot of tequila on the bar. I said, heads I stay, tails I go. And she goes like this, and I flipped it up, tails it was, fired down the shot, and I walked out the door. That was how I quit I wouldn't recommend anybody does that, or with the tequila and the quitting your job without notice. But I literally had reached the point of like no return. And I walked out. I remember they were looking for me, and this was pre-cell phone, so nobody could find me. And I went to another club where I knew a bunch of buddies worked and just drank the rest of the night. But, you know, that was literally how I started my career. And Stacy was like, you did what? You did what? I'm like, well, you know, I can always go back to bartender, but I just didn't want to. And I just remember.
This has got to be, Mike, this has got to be one of the craziest stories ever. All right, let me fast forward you a little bit. Let me fast forward you a little bit.
Yeah.
When did it start working for you?
It was, so I knew that I didn't know what I was doing. Right. And so I started hanging out with these guys, and there was like weekly meetings, and I kept going. And I just remember I was really, really hungry for the information. Like I would sit there like, you know, at the edge of my seat, listening to the presentation, because I knew that if I just gave the presentation like they were doing, because I noticed that there was a pattern that I went every week and it was the same presentation. Clue, right? Like it was, even though there was different people speaking. And I remember that. Well, then I've got a VHS tape, the old VHS tapes of a guy who'd given a presentation. And all I did is I would sit in my living room and I'd put it in and I would watch it over and over and over and over and over till the point that I could do it verbatim. And what happened was it probably was about 6 months to a year in, you know, roughly, to where I had actually probably closer to 6 months that I had matched my bartending career bit money, which wasn't it wasn't a lot. It was not like I needed a ton of money to live on at the time, just so I didn't have at that point. But still,
that meant that you had finally reached the point where you were able to sustain yourself through your own business,
and which people have no idea the power of that, because it's literally like if you didn't know how to swim and somebody shoved you in the shallow end of the pool, you freak out in the shallow end of the pool because you've never been in water. Right. But when you finally put your feet down and the water's only up to your waist, you're like, let's go, bro, let's bring it on. And it was almost like that revelation of that I could do this. And I remember just the excitement of it. And yeah, there was plenty of people that were like, what are you doing? You did what? You quit bartending. And I remember one time, and I love him today, but Stacy's dad was a big driving force for me, because I'm dating and about to get married to his daughter. And he called, and she was waitressing still. So my wife was still waitressing, and she was an extremely important part of this story. I don't exist as an entrepreneur without my wife, because she would waitress, and she was making decent money in these nicer, higher end restaurants as she worked her way up. I mean, she worked at Chili's and some other nice, some local restaurants. I mean, she was 9 months pregnant with our first child, working as a waitress, bringing in some extra money while I was getting my dream together. And, to have that support. But Stacy's dad, I remember one time he called, and I was home with my daughter, because she was working at night and I was working doing this business kind of in the day. And sometimes, you could call people. And I remember he called one time and he says, hey, Mike, what's up? I'm like, nothing. He says, where's Stacy? I go, well, she's at work right now. And he goes, oh, what are you doing? You at home counting your money? And I was like, oh, I cannot. I mean, it was such a jab. Like, you know what I mean? And as a dude, that hurts, right? You're supposed to be the provider and everything like that. And it was kind of, ironically, it was kind of one of those driving things for a while of like, I'll show you. So I used that to my benefit.
How long did it take for you to show them? How long did it take for you to get to the place?
I'm still trying to show them. They still can't figure out what I do. It's 25 years later, and they still don't know what I do. Like, I'm not kidding. They're like, how are you taking all these trips? I'm like, well, how'd you buy that car? How did you go on this vacation? How did you go see every single game and every single practice? Like, I didn't just get to see.
Okay. So you're answering my big question right now.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
My big question is, what is freedom like? And you already started every game, every practice. Go ahead.
Somebody told me there was a gentleman I met a long, long time ago, and he used to have a saying. He said that there's a significant difference between making a living and having a life. And it was so powerful, because everything is wrapped up in that right there. Like, literally everything that you do, every reason why you would do this business, every reason that you would, have to deal with, Billy Bob Broken Poor telling you that them things don't work, and, getting ridiculed by your family. But it's, when, like, my first goal was first off to get out of the bar business, which I then accomplished. The next thing I didn't realize was there was a benefit of being able to sleep in when you were done sleeping, as opposed to waking up to an alarm clock. I'm a morning guy now. I get up at like 5:30, but back then it was like I couldn't stand an alarm clock. I didn't want to be told what to do, when to do it. And then when you have kids, obviously that changes you. And once I had my first, once I heard my daughter, I have 3 kids now. They're all basically, I got one more that's about to graduate high school. And I just kept thinking to my, this whole time was, even in the times when it's not, you're not running around with a Rolex and driving the car of everybody's dreams, you cannot put a price tag on the ability to spend the time that you want, when you want, with the people you want. Like, I literally kid you not, in all of the years that my kids did sports, and we homeschooled our kids for the first few years, they were really, both my boys were really, really good athletes. I ended up getting them in, they ended up going to high school. and they're superstar athletes, you know, scholarships, the whole 9 yards. But to sit there, like I even get to watch football practices.
Right.
You know, they like after I love just going ride. So I'll ride my bike. The school's about a mile and a half down the street. I'll get on it. It's Monday, 3 in the afternoon. I ride down there and I'll sit in the stands, sunglasses on, getting a tan, and I watch my kid play football. You know, and it's just incredible what you can do with that kind of lifestyle. So
that's phenomenal. And I'm telling you, brother, people needed to hear that. I got folks in the Facebook chat just talking about what an awesome story this is. Mike, what have you got for everybody?
I think I'll give you some advice on the turning point for me was when I finally realized that there's plenty of ways to make money, but then when I figured out how to stop chasing money and start chasing mentorship. I said this in one of the calls we did earlier a couple of days ago, and that was kind of a bigger turning point for me because here's the cool part. The Carla, you're like light years ahead of everybody else at your age, which is very advanced. So congratulations. You did a fantastic job. You're obviously young, but to have that wisdom already of someone saying, get mentorship and learn, and there's a different way, you know, I mean, I literally had no idea what I was doing for quite some time. And it wasn't until I found the mentors. And I just think that, you know, with what we're all a part of, we have some of the best in the world. And I'm not just saying that, you know, because I'm smart enough now that I would be able, and I have enough credibility and influence in the industry, I could choose what I wanted to do when I wanted to do it. And there's a reason that I'm in this spot. And there's a reason I'm part of this opportunity due to the fact that they have everything that we've been looking for. And I also realize, and this back to the actual original question, that this is going to pass. We all know this is going to pass. And one of the reasons I mentioned the mentorship is you have, in times like this, it is extremely important to latch onto people that have a calming spirit, have a calming way about them, that have been through issues, that have have learned things and so on. And you have to be very cautious of who you listen to. It just, you do have to take note of, your brain's basically a file cabinet, and do you want bad files or good files? And I just think that what we have our hands on is something unique, something special. And here, I meant to say this very early on, is I wanted to say thank you to you, T. Gray, for all of the work that you put in, because I understand how difficult it is a lot of times to get the juices flowing when it's way easier to sit on the couch, when it's way easier to do things. And I know that everybody that, that you can't see them would fully applaud you. You have no idea the impact that you're having right now on everybody globally between you and Kithcart. I mean, you guys are crazy half the time on the things, but that's why we plug in, because we need that in this day and age. It's fun to watch you guys having fun because, in that little moment that we have, you guys juice us up, which we then can spread the wealth of that juice. So I just, because I don't talk to you that often. I mean, a lot of people think that, that we all have these relationships, but I really don't. We text every once in a while, every couple of weeks. But I have my opportunity now to publicly declare, T. Gray's the man, T. Gray's awesome. And the whole team you put together. I know you get your juice from these guys, and collectively, that's what's so important. And I think that's what makes what we're doing unique. And most people join networking companies for the opportunity to make money or the products, but they ultimately stay for the community and the culture. The community's the people, culture's how we do it. And I think you guys done a tremendous job to creating the culture that it's more fun. The money naturally happens because of what you guys put together. So I seriously appreciate you guys inviting me on here. And I'm glad I got to give you some props publicly, because I know you guys don't get that. And really, really seriously, I'm not messing around. You guys are awesome. You're doing a great job.
I totally love you for it, bro. And I appreciate you. And